Hey everyone, this is Greg from Fourmore. Fourmore is the Liquor of the Month subscription club for people here in the US. So Scotch, whiskey, bourbon, tequila, mezcal, and rum. And we are on a series to meet with a lot of our brands we're sending out in recent months so we can introduce you to the names behind the bottles you get at home. So today I have Julieann Fernandez from Bunnahabhain in Scotland. And we are going to talk about the Bunnahabhain products that we've been sending out recently. So welcome, Julieann.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you for having me on. It's lovely to be here.
Can you talk a little bit, tell us about your personal history, how long you've been at Bunnahabhain, where are you located, tell us about that.
Yep, so I'm the Master Blender for CVH Spirits, so I look after Bunnahabhain, of course, and also Distillery, which is about 40 minutes from Glasgow, and Tobermory Distillery over in the Isle of Mull. So I've been with CVH for about 7 years now and been Master Blender since 2019. And yeah, it's great. So Bunnahabhain, located over on Islay. It's the most northerly distillery on Islay. I'm based on the mainland, just outside Glasgow, but obviously I make frequent journeys over to Bunnahabhain when the weather's kind enough to let us get over there.
Now, the title of Master Distiller, can you talk to us a little bit about what it takes to get there, your personal journey? I think that we'd really love to hear about that.
Yeah, so my journey's been a little bit more unconventional. My plan wasn't to go into the whisky industry, so I started off studying forensic science at university, and then I took a year out just to do a placement year and get some industry experience, and it just so happened that my placement year was in the whisky industry. So I went back, I graduated, finished my degree, and just went straight back into the whisky industry. So it was more kind of analytical, laboratory-based stuff that I was doing. And then in 2017, I made the move over to what was Distiller at the time, which is now CVH, as blender. And since then, it's been a whirlwind. It's been a really quick journey for me. For me, it's just all about nosing, tasting, gaining as much experience as you can. So for me to be Master Blender, I think you need to base it on having a kind of solid foundation of how whiskey is actually made, understanding different cask types. My role basically involves everything from when it's distilled and becomes new make spirit, that's when it becomes my responsibility. So selecting the casks that it goes into, maintaining our wood profile, launching limited editions, writing tasting notes, doing master classes. So it's a really varied role, but one that I absolutely love.
How much of your day is spent tasting whiskey versus all the other things around crafting and blending and all the other pieces?
It honestly just depends what we're doing. So we'll have a couple of times a year where we have our busier period. Take Fesio, for example, which is the big whisky festival over on Islay, and Bunnahabhain has its own day at the festival. On the run up to that, we launch usually 3 limited editions for that. So the weeks running up to that, you're constantly nosing, tasting, making sure that what you're launching is absolutely perfect. And then there's other days where it's maybe only 1 or 2 samples that I'll look at each day.
Well, that's very cool. So Bunnahabhain is an older distillery in the run. Would love to hear. Can you give us a little bit of history of the brand, history of the distillery? Talk to us about the company.
Yeah, so Bunnahabhain was established in 1881. It means mouth of the river, and that refers to the River Margadale. So the distillery sits right at the mouth of the River Margadale. It overlooks this beautiful body of water called the Sound of Islay. And we use the spring water from the River Margadale to make the whisky in our distillery. So Islay is sort of famed for peated whisky, and that's absolutely not what we are at Bunnahabhain. So we are unpeated Islay sherried, and that's what makes us stand out against all the other distilleries on the island. So as I said, dates all the way back to 1881. Everything used to come in by boat, so we've still got a beautiful pier at the distillery. You'll see we have a helmsman on our bottle. It's got such a history of seafaring, and that is illustrated by the helmsman that's on every one of our bottles. So heritage and tradition really are the key drivers for everything that we do at Bunnahabhain. It's a very authentic distillery. It's all about sense of place, and the kind of remote feel and essence of the brand drives that sort of sense of pilgrimage required to visit it. So Bunnahabhain's the most northerly distillery on Islay. It's only accessible by this little single track road, so it really is like a pilgrimage to make it to the distillery, but it's absolutely worth it when you get there.
How much land do you guys have up there?
Oh, that's a great question actually. In terms of land, I'm not sure how much land we have, but we have our distillery, we've got warehouses over there, and we recently opened a biomass energy centre. So we should be the first net zero distillery on Islay, and we're saving about 5,500 tonnes of carbon emissions per year, which is great. So basically what we are saving in oil is the equivalent to removing all of the road vehicles from Islay and our neighbouring island, Jura. So it's really good how much we've sort of focused on the sustainability at the distillery as well, and having the land up there has allowed us to put the biomass energy centre in.
Oh, that's amazing. So that leads to a question about, so again, we have a legacy brand, 140 years or so of history. Talk about the recent era. Talk about the last 15, 20 years of Bunnahabhain, where you guys have been and have you been evolving.
Yeah, so we are obviously having that heritage. You do need to stay true to your sort of house style. And as I said, we are unpeated, Islay sherried. So the beautiful spring water that we get from the River Margadale, we pipe that underground so that you're not getting any peat influence in that. So we do produce peated spirit at the distillery as well, but our unpeated spirit is our focus, and that has remained the same for the last 20 years. We are still small batch production, and we mature as much as we can on the island just to give us that lovely coastal influence. And staying true to our heritage, we fill about 80% of our Bunnahabhain into sherry casks, and we use a lot of Oloroso sherry casks at Bunnahabhain. So what we do is basically very, very true to our house style, but for Festival, the festival that I mentioned, you are seeing the kind of experimental side of Bunnahabhain, so we'll do one release of that's maybe a little bit more unusual, that takes us off the sherry path and onto something that little bit different.
Okay, yeah, we'll talk about more about some of that in a minute. I think it's really interesting being an Islay Scotch and not peated, right? So do you feel like you have to explain that a lot? People have come in with a preconceived notion of what an Islay whiskey is, or do you feel like people don't know quite as much?
Absolutely. So as soon as you say Islay, people do assume that it's peated. And even with our expressions, so the 12-year-old, for example, people say, well, you're still getting a bit of peat coming through in it, but we're not. That's why we pipe the water underground. We do everything we can to make sure that there's no peat influence in that, because what we pride ourselves in is that the majority of our production is unpeated. And I think once people taste it, they fall in love with it and they understand why we do pride ourselves in this unpeated spirit.
Very cool. I gotta tell you, my first bottle of Bunnahabhain that I had was my father-in-law gave it to me the week we got engaged, and so for forever, Bunnahabhain was called the engagement Scotch for my family, because we remembered that. So that was we would keep buying it as sort of the memory of that, and so it was fun to be able to connect and get the bottle over here. We had the regular Bunnahabhain, not the 12, but so I have a personal history with the bottle that I always like to share.
That's lovely. It's so nice hearing stories like that, because for me, whiskey can really take you on a journey and you create so many memories with it, and it's lovely that Bunnahabhain's obviously part of your special story.
Yeah, talk about, so how much time do you spend with consumers hearing about their experiences? How much time do you spend focused on the whiskey?
Again, it's just completely mixed. I was actually recently in the States, so I was over in New Jersey and Chicago, and I did some tastings in Binnie's and a few different places, tastings with bartenders. So lots of different sort of events where I speak to different consumers. There'll be times where I do master classes, whether it's over on Islay or anywhere really. So, but I absolutely love it. I really love hearing people's feedback and their comments, and especially when I was in the States, it was so interesting to hear how consumers just love Bunnahabhain, whether it's our 12-year-old or our 12 cask strength, and I just love hearing people's tasting notes and their feedback. So it's definitely a part of the job that I really do enjoy.
Yeah, one thing I think is it's both challenging and an opportunity is you want to be able to listen to consumer feedback and be able to move to where they are, but obviously it takes time, right? Whiskey, you can't just release, a new flavor 2 weeks from now because you have the idea. So how do you balance being innovative and pushing the whiskey forward versus listening to consumer feedback and thinking about where consumers are going to be?
Yeah, so as well, we're obviously regulated quite tightly by the SWA, so there's certain cask types and things that we can't use, but I do always like to sort of try and push those boundaries a little bit, and there'll be times where I lay down stock and it's maybe a very experimental cask and you just don't know how long it's going to take to finish. So the weather in Scotland, we do not have the hottest summers, and we obviously have very cold winters. So like you say, you can't just put something in a cask and in a couple of months it's ready. Most of the finishes that I use are 2 years minimum, just because of the weather. Sometimes it does finish earlier than that, sometimes it doesn't. But for me, it's always about kind of trying to be that step ahead, looking for trends, seeing what's popular, and yeah, just trying to lay it down as quickly as I can, almost ahead of the curve, so that we can be the first to be innovative and do things that are that little bit different.
I love that. So can we talk a little bit about what makes Bunnahabhain different, right? You walk in the liquor store, you walk down to a lot of scotch on any store. What makes Bunnahabhain stand out in the spectrum?
For me, it's the quality of our liquid. Bunnahabhain it wins awards all through the year, no matter which awards it is that we've entered into. Bunnahabhain always comes out with a really, really high score, and that really is down to the quality of our liquid. The quality of our liquid comes from two things. So it starts obviously at the distillery, where they make the best new make spirit. Andrew Brown, our distillery manager at Bunnahabhain, has just celebrated 35 years service at Bunnahabhain. Wow. So there's nobody who knows that distillery better than him. He knows it inside out, absolutely. And he obviously prides himself in that. So they make the best quality new make spirit at the distillery. And then we're very, very fortunate that our company, they're huge on investment, and they give me a huge cask budget. So I buy the best quality casks to lay all of our malts down in. But with Bunnahabhain, typically it's Oloroso sherry casks that I buy. So I'll go over to Jerez once or twice a year and meet the bodegas and cask suppliers who we work with over there, and make sure that we're getting the best quality. And you can see that it really does come through in the liquid. And Bunnahabhain as well, all of Bunnahabhain's core range, it's natural colour, it's non-chill filtered, so we don't chill filter any of our malts. And because we're not chill filtering it, we have to have that ABV a little bit higher, so it's at 46.3%, and it just means that you get the beautiful mouthfeel there. It really does coat the palate, the flavours are intense, and it's just a wonderful liquid, and that's what makes it really stand out. When somebody tries Bunnahabhain, they'll want to go back to it.
Yeah, I get that. So the between the high quality liquids and the planning there, and also all the sort of innovative things you're laying down, talk to us about the portfolio. Talk to us about, you've got the core expressions, you've got some other things that are kind of more innovative. Tell us about what's out right now, and maybe what's coming down the pipeline.
Yeah, so we've got our core range starts with Bunnahabhain Struder, which was a non-age statement. So it's Bunnahabhain that's been matured in both bourbon and Oloroso, and then basically married together before it goes into the bottle. Really lovely. I don't want to say entry level, because I think that makes it sound as though it's kind of cheaper or it's not as good. It's not, but it's a very approachable liquid because of the influence of the sherry and the bourbon. You get a lot of spice and dried fruits in there, so really, really beautiful expression. We've then got our Bunnahabhain 12-year-old, and for me that's our kind of flagship brand. It's quintessentially Bunnahabhain. So again, it's a mixture of Bunnahabhain that's been fully matured in Oloroso sherry casks and Bunnahabhain that's been fully matured in bourbon barrels. We do try and mature as much as we can on the island, so especially with our 12-year-old and over, you do get a lot of that coastal influence coming through, so a little bit of sea spray in it. We did have a Bunnahabhain 12-year-old cask strength as well, and what was really exciting about that is I didn't just make a batch of Bunnahabhain 12, take some off at cask strength and then reduce it to the 46.3 for our core. Every cask was hand selected for the 12-year-old cask strength, so we've done a couple of additions now, and it meant that maybe one year it was 100% Oloroso, and then the next year it was maybe, say, 80% with a bit of bourbon in there, or maybe even a little bit of red wine. So it's nice that I can use the Bunnahabhain 12 cask strength to sort of play tunes on the flavours of Bunnahabhain. We didn't release a Bunnahabhain 12 cask strength for 2024, but we have launched a Bunnahabhain 21-year-old cask strength, which is absolutely beautiful. So that's Bunnahabhain that's finished for 2 years in Pedro Jimenez casks, and again beautifully rich at 46.3 like the rest of our malts, non-chill filtered, and it's absolutely beautiful. It only launched in September, but the feedback's been overwhelming. It's doing so well, and yeah, I think we're just waiting to see how things go. It could be that 21 forms part of our core range. I'm hoping next year we bring back the 12-year-old cask strength. So yeah, there's a lot going on at Bunnahabhain.
That's a lot, yeah.
Yeah, we've also got our peated expression, which I know that you can get in the States. So as I said, we make a small percentage of peated malt over on Islay as well. So it's called Monya. That's our peated Bunnahabhain that comes out of the distillery. So we use some of that in an expression called Bunnahabhain Toshkada, and it basically means smoky too. So it's Bunnahabhain, both peated and unpeated, but a higher percentage of the peated Bunnahabhain in there, and a mixture of sherry and bourbon casks again. And yeah, that's our only peated one that we have in our core range. But again, really, really beautiful. It's not your typical overpowering peat that you can get. It's much more gentle, kind of a sweet peat, and just really approachable.
Well, so what drove the decision to do a peated whiskey after all discussion about not doing peated? Why did you finally commit to doing some peated expressions?
I think, well, a couple of reasons. So Bunnahabhain did used to produce peated whiskey years and years ago, and then we stopped for a while. So we wanted to get back to doing that. And as well, just as you said earlier, when you say Islay, you assume peated whiskey. So we thought we'll make a small percentage just so that we can show the other big players on the island that we can still do peated as well. And it's nice to have it there for, you get so many peated whiskey fans that come over to the island. So it's nice to have something for them as well when they visit our distillery.
Yeah, I get that. Okay, so this past month we sent out the Bunnahabhain Strudge. Remind me how to pronounce it.
Studer.
Studer.
Yes, that means helmsman, and that's back to that helmsman that we spoke about.
Yes. So you gave us a little bit of insight into it. Talk a little bit more for those at home who are watching and who got the bottle. Give them a little bit more flavor about like where that bottle comes from, what they should be pairing it with, or mixing with, not mixing, but pairing with and tasting with. Just talk a little more about that one in particular.
Yeah, so it's actually interesting that you said that. For me, there's no right or wrong way to drink whiskey. So if you want to mix it, absolutely fine. A few drops of water on the rocks, whatever you want, absolutely fine. What I would say is try it neat first. I think that's where you get most of the flavours. But it might be that you want to add a couple of drops of water just to open it up a little bit, which is of course absolutely fine. So Struder, non-age statement, most of the malts in there will be between roughly about 5 and 7 years old. A mixture between Oloroso sherry and bourbon casks. So from the Oloroso you're getting more of that spice coming through. When I was in the States I kept saying things like Christmas pudding, and there were so many things that I said, like sultanas, that you don't actually get in the States. So like golden raisins and spices like cinnamon and nutmeg, that all comes through, but it's beautifully integrated with the influence of the bourbon casks. So you're getting creamy caramel coming through, a little bit of vanilla as well. Yeah, beautifully balanced, well-rounded, and the mouth coating on it is absolutely beautiful just because we've kept all of those oils in there. and it pairs well with a number of different things. So my go-to tends to be cheese. I love Bunnahabhain Suzer with a cheese board. Any cheese at all, hard cheese, cream cheese, blue cheese in particular, it pairs beautifully with.
Okay.
But it also goes really well with seafood and chocolate.
Okay. I like that, the idea of a Scotch and cheese board. I feel like that's a good combo.
Yeah.
And then what I have here, so you guys sent over, so we've got the Bunnahabhain 12. These things. So I'll open it up right now. Tell us a little bit more about the 12. I know we talked a little bit about it already. First of all, beautiful bottle. I love the bottle design. And here's the helmsman on there for those who haven't seen it before.
Yeah, beautiful
So
bottle.
let's dive into it.
And so yeah, what's quite interesting about this actually is you'll see that the bottle's obviously dark in colour. When I'm making batches of Bunnahabhain 12, for example, I use a lot of blue glassware in the lab so that I'm not sort of tasting with my eyes. So for me, it's about quality and consistency, and batch to batch, you will never be able to taste any difference in character. It will be absolutely consistent. But if you've got two bottles of Bunnahabhain 12 and you pour them side by side, you might notice a tiny little bit of a difference in colour, just because for me, the colour's not important. We don't add any caramel to it. It's all natural. It's all colour that's come from the casks. So a bit of natural variation is absolutely fine. It's about the character of the liquid. The stills that we have in Bunnahabhain are the tallest stills on Islay, so it produces a more delicate, light flavour. We then obviously take that and fill it into Oloroso casks, some bourbon casks, and just some standard refill casks as well. For our 12-year-olds, we do mature as much as we can on the island, and obviously I know a lot of your viewers will be very familiar with the angel share, so the 2% that we lose every year. And I just feel when the cask breathes out and we lose that 2%, as it breathes in, it takes with it that beautiful coastal sea air, and that influences the character of the whisky, and it gives this really interesting and unusual briny undertone in our whiskies.
I am definitely getting that sea salt and ocean air. I'm like, you said it, so maybe that influenced, but there's a couple scotches that I feel that you don't get that in bourbon. You don't get that lightness, the saltiness of it, and I really do taste it. We've done a lot of bourbon recently, so the contrast is really nice to put next to each other.
Yeah, I almost get it as like salted caramel that comes through in this Bunnahabhain. Again, the beautiful notes of sherry coming through, but what I love about Bunnahabhain, it's quite a robust spirit, so it can stand up to 12 years full maturation in Oloroso casks, no problem. We've not overpowered that natural character of Bunnahabhain, we've just added to it, and you're getting those like dark berries coming through.
Yeah, I'm getting like apricot, raisin. I'm also getting some nutmeg. Is that about right? I mean, I'm getting some like, yeah.
Absolutely, yep. I get nutmeg, cloves. Yeah, the spice on the palate is absolutely beautiful as well, and that's where I get a lot of that sea salt. You can feel it, and the sea salt really does linger.
I was about to say, it has a lot of linger, and I feel it's making me like thirsty. It's the salt that it's pulling me forward, which is why it probably pairs really well with like a cheese, except for that because they probably have a really nice complement of the dry salt with the cheese salt. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely a lot of apricot coming through in it as well. It's like those apricot, like fromage free, you know, the children's yogurts that you get. I don't really get it in the States, but yeah, that's what it reminds me of.
What I like is I feel like I'm getting some smokiness in it, like a little like a hint of a little bit of smoke on the back end. Not overpowering, not the big Islay peaty stuff we talked about, but I'm getting smoke on the back of the plate. Is that there?
I personally don't get it. I get quite a lot of wood spice coming through, so like kind of charred oak coming through in it. But tasting notes are so subjective, so what one person gets might not be the same as somebody else, which is absolutely fine.
I wanted charred wood could also play as smoke in my mind. I don't have a very sophisticated palate, so I'm just sort of like I like to say things that I like to. It's like I remember I'm watching Somm, that documentary about sommelier training, and they taught them to just keep talking, and as you do it, and the act of talking just brings things to mind. As you go through things, what would you say is your approach when you're doing tasting notes, when you're tasting things? How do you pull forward your insights and flavors to then talk about them?
Yeah, so very much like that. I'll nose and I'll taste it at normally at cask strength first, and I'll just scribble down anything that comes to mind. So half the time it doesn't even make sense, but for me, I think sometimes tasting whiskey can evoke memories and take you places. So there's sometimes where you know something and it reminds you of strawberry picking when you were a child, and you've got the kind of like wet grass and fresh strawberries in there, and I'll just write things like that down, and then I'll reduce it to bottling strength, so 46.3, and again I'll just go back and see what flavours are standing out for me, and then I normally reduce it to around about 20% as well, just to make sure that in case somebody was mixing it or adding water or whatever it may be, that at 20% it still is very, very balanced and very well integrated. And again, just write down anything that comes to mind. And yeah, you're right, sometimes I'll go back to it. I think what's quite important as well is a whiskey can change so much just depending on the mood that you're in or the environment. So there's times where I'll taste something and my sort of blend centre, which is just outside Glasgow, and then I'll take that same whiskey over to Bunnahabhain, and when I taste it on the pier over there, it tastes completely different. So I like to kind of take the whiskey about with me and just taste it in different places as well.
I find also for Scotch in particular, I feel like, well, first of all, for all whiskeys, but there's cold weather and there's warm weather, and there's also like an inside and an outside, and I feel like Scotch changes so often from sitting in a room listening to music versus like sitting outside on a chill fall evening. The fire. It's the same bottle, but two totally different experiences with that.
Absolutely. Yep. I couldn't agree more. I'm exactly the same.
So to enjoy this fully in your mind, what is the best? What would be your ideal venue and time to have the Bunnahabhain 12? Where would you craft your perfect scenario?
There's got to be two. One, because the pier at Bunnahabhain, honestly, every Bunnahabhain expression just tastes even better when you're sitting on that pier. You've got the distillery behind you, you're looking out over the Sound of Islay, so that's definitely one of them. But I understand it's a bit of a pilgrimage to get there. So the other one for me, Bunnahabhain is so warming, and for me it's perfect for this time of year for holiday season. My ideal time for drinking Bunnahabhain is a nice dark night in front of like a big open fire. You can smell that wood burning, and you've got this beautiful dram of Bunnahabhain just to warm you up inside.
I'm in for that. Okay, and then the last question I like to ask people is, obviously you drink a lot of Bunnahabhain. That is your world. When you're not drinking Bunnahabhain, what else do you like to drink?
In terms of whiskey or just drinks in general?
Well, do both. What other whiskey would you like to drink, and then what other drinks do you like as well?
Well, of course, I need to stay loyal to Bunnahabhain's brothers and sisters. So Tobermory, Deanston. I think Deanston, for me, Deanston's so different to Bunnahabhain, and that's what I love about it. We majority of our maturations in bourbon, so it's kind of a lot lighter, sweeter, not as spicy. But away from the world of whiskey, red wine is my absolute go-to.
Gosh, that feels like on par for a master blender. I feel like there's so much complexity in wine as well. You get to enjoy the same experiences in that. Yeah,
I think for me, like you say, red wine is so complex, and going from one glass of wine to another, if it's a different type, I can get all those difference in flavours there.
Yeah.
Whereas with beer, I just can't do that. you could change beer in front of me 4 or 5 times, and I just would not be able to tell you the difference. So yeah, that's why I'll stick to things that I can actually taste the flavors in.
Yeah. Have you ever drank the wine that came from a barrel that you then aged the Scotch in? Okay.
Yes, so I've only done it once with red wine, but I've done it quite a few times with the sherry. So both when I've been over at Jerez, I've tasted them before we've put the Bunnahabhain into it. And when we've done really special projects, I mentioned there that our distillery manager, Andrew Brown's just celebrated 35-year service.
Yeah.
So we're doing a very exclusive release. There's only going to be 35 bottles, and it's the kind of Andrew Brown 35-year-old release. And PX is his absolute favourite cask type, so I got a little PX firkin made for him, and I got the PX out of that for Andrew and I to taste. So we tasted it like before it went into the PX cask, we tasted the PX, then we tasted it afterwards, so that we were properly on the journey with the whiskey, which was beautiful.
Yeah. Well, if you have any extra bottles of the 35-year, you can send one over my way. I would love to taste it if you have.
Absolutely. Next time I'm in the States, I'll drop by with one.
There we go. Well, Julieann, this has been fantastic. Anything else you want to tell the audience about Bunnahabhain, about the background? What else? Anything else you want to tell us before we call it?
So Bunnahabhain is an absolutely beautiful distillery. It is in quite a remote location, but a beautiful location, and you will not be disappointed if you make that journey over. We have a wonderful team over there. We're sort of famed for one of our warehouse tastings. We have a beautiful warehouse, Warehouse 9, where our team at the visitor centre do tastings in there, and the team there are great. You're tasting it straight from the cask. We have lots of kind of unique cask types in there, and it really is, it's worth going to. And if anybody who is listening is ever making their way over to the distillery, please do just drop me a message on Instagram, and if I'm over there, I'll make sure that I come and say hi. And we would love to have you there. And you as well, Greg. Anytime that you're travelling to Scotland, please do come and visit us at Bunnahabhain.
I will. Let me ask this question actually before we go. Where is the sweet spot in your rick houses?
Where's the sweet spot in what, sorry?
Where's in all your storage, all your racks, all the Scotch? Is there a sweet spot in the building where the best casks come from?
We've got a warehouse at Bunnahabhain called Warehouse 4, and it's the one that's closest to the water. So see the casks that are right at the front of that warehouse. Obviously, you know, casks have got hoops on them. The hoops on these casks, they rust so quickly and they burst, and we're constantly having to replace the hoops on it. That whiskey in there at the front of Warehouse 4, because it's getting, obviously the weather in Scotland is terrible, so these waves come up, they crash against Warehouse 4, we get so much of that coastal influence, and for me, that is the sweet spot. That's the best whiskey that's coming out of Bunnahabhain, is the casks that we have in Warehouse 4.
How does one get a bottle from one of those casks?
When you come and visit the distillery.
Got it.
Yeah, so that's one of the treats.
Warehouse 4.
Yes. Absolutely. When you visit the distillery, just say, Julieann said I need to try something from Warehouse 4, and I'll make sure it happens.
That is perfect. All right. Well, thank you, Julieann, so much. I really appreciate it, and thank you for the bottle, and thank you, everyone, for tuning in.
Thank you so much. Slán Java.
Slán Java. Thank you.